Welcome to the GAME.minder report, and I have to sneeze.
Yeah, why you gotta scream so much, man? I just said exciting. I didn't say loud.
Because I was about to sneeze. I was like, what do I do?
Welcome to the...
Exactly. I felt it coming. I was like, oh, this is not going to be good.
All right.
Welcome
to the GAME.minder report.
Your weekly source of upcoming gaming news and information for the week of October 24th.
So clearly you've taken some speed, because the way you were feeling this morning, you were not going to be that excited.
It's amazing what sleep actually does for you.
Right on. Jimmy P was not feeling good this morning. Yeah. He must have eaten some bad brie.
Yeah, up here is fine.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and let's stop there. So, news and entertainment, exciting stuff in the gaming realm this week.
Yes.
The first thing I wanted to talk about, of course, because I'm a huge Apple geek, is the iPad mini.
Yes.
But of course, because this is gaming related, I would like to discuss how this might be related to gaming. And I think it's actually going to be quite a boon, because I think, and correct me if you feel differently about this, a lot of the coolest games on iOS are full screen iPad games.
Okay.
And you really you can't get that sort of immersive experience on the phone. The phone is good for,
correct,
sort of commuter games and quick puzzle games or whatever. But like a game like The Room, which I did have a problem with in terms of pricing and being too short, but a game like that, you really need that big screen for it. But I think a lot of people are reticent to spend more than $500 on a device that is essentially just a gaming device.
The one thing I feel about gamers, and this has always been back from, I think it really started when the original PlayStation happened, and then going on forward was polygons and it looking realistic, looking awesome, looking good, looking awesome. The iPad mini does not have a Retina display.
It doesn't, but I don't know that that's going to matter.
I think it will. I think people are going to be like, I'd rather spend the money if I'm going to use this device as my gaming device. I'm not going to buy a PS Vita. I'm not going to buy a DS.
Right.
They're going to want the best graphics, and there's two things you can do. You can either have the iPhone 5 and have a smaller screen, or you can get the iPad 4th generation.
Yeah, see, I don't know. Because, again, that speaks against what I was just saying, which is the whole pricing issue. The iPad 4th generation is still a $500 plus. Now, a lot of people are complaining because $329, which is the cheapest you can get a mini now, does seem a bit pricey, comparatively speaking. A lot of people are saying, oh, they got to hit the $199 price point or this thing is going to be no big deal. And or they got to hit the $299 price point or people aren't going to care. And they didn't hit either of those. They did $329, which is more. But I got to say, I think, especially knowing that having something in my house that I can hand to my 6- and 4-year-olds, like they use the iPad, but it always looks a little unwieldy in their hands. And I think something like this that's smaller but can still use all of the apps that I've already bought. Like it's, I don't have to go buy a Kindle Fire and start buying them Android versions of all these apps that they play. I think it's going to work a lot better. In situations like what I have, where someone wants a device that can do all of these things, It's not a dedicated gaming device, but it really does gaming well. I'm not saying the screen isn't non-retina, because it is. It is a non-retina screen. But since it is the exact same resolution as the old one, but smaller, it's good. There's going to be less jaggies noticeable depending on how close you hold it.
I guess I just looked it up. You can get the Vita for $250.
So it's actually only like $80 less.
Right, but it's a dedicated gaming device that is going to that has arguably the best graphics out there.
Yep. And
it's going to have actual games that aren't just a bunch of Angry Bird clones.
Well, but there is more than that going on iOS.
I'm
not saying there's not a ton of that, because there is. But I think, The Room is a good example.
Right, but your initial sentence was a game. This could be your gaming device.
Yeah, that's true.
And my counter argument, my counterpoint, is that no, save $50 and get an actual gaming device.
I will say this: I played the Vita at IndieCade. I played a game that was essentially a tablet game. You actually had to hold the Vita up like this, but it used the rear touch screen, so you didn't actually have to have your finger obscuring what you were playing while you were playing. You just played on the back, and it was actually a really cool experience. So I'm not saying that the Vita doesn't have stuff going on, because it does. But what I am saying is that, especially if you're talking about a household where the dad has an iPhone, the mom has an iPhone. Maybe they've been sharing an iPad 2 or an iPad 3, and they always feel a little weird handing their phone that they need to use as their phone or their big $500 plus iPad to their kids to play these games. a device like this, I think, is going to be an add-on device for a lot of those households because it's going to sit right in that middle. And people like me, I've already spent a ton of money buying kids games that are iPad native, and I don't even have to rebuy them. They all work exactly the way that they work before.
No, and that's fine. I guess because you've already spent you did it in reverse. You bought the games, and now you're trying to buy
the device that's going to work best with them.
Right. I mean, coming soon, most kids that are going to be playing with where your children are going to be playing DS games.
If we get them a DS, which we haven't decided if we're going to or not.
Yeah, but no, it's very interesting. Me personally, and they weren't touting it as a gaming device.
This is true.
So this is just us talking about it. So we can say that.
But I will say this: I think a lot of that is because Apple doesn't really understand the gaming world.
No, but
you know what I mean. They are just not. They're very Me Too on games. They kind of fell backwards, if you will, into being the sort of the mobile gaming juggernaut. Yeah, but I think we should counterpoint this because there's another interesting hardware thing coming this week.
Oh, what is that?
That is the Microsoft Surface. Comes out on Friday. Now, the Microsoft Surface is obviously, in a lot of ways, an iPad competitor. Mm-hmm. It's also sort of a netbook competitor. Mm-hmm. And it is not, again, it's also not a dedicated gaming device, but I think, if Microsoft does their job in terms of getting developers on board, it will have a pretty decent gaming library eventually. I don't think it's going to right away.
Well, I think off the bat, the one thing that the Surface is marketing better than the iPad was. Yeah. Not saying this is going to work, but they're definitely saying, hey, you really don't need a computer. Yeah, you can use this, especially with the built-in. Because one of the biggest arguments that I've heard from my parents and my friends were saying, "Oh, I need a new computer," and I was like, "Well, why don't you just get an iPad?" Yeah. But they're like, "Well, I don't want to type. The typing's messed up." Well, now you have a keyboard with this.
And that's where I think, honestly, I mean, I have never been Microsoft's biggest fan, but I got to tell you, even with Windows Phone 7, I thought they were doing things that were far more interesting than Android. Mm-hmm. And what they're trying to do now with Windows 8 and this sort of Metro interface and the new tablet sort of halfway in between kind of a thing, I think is really compelling. Yes. And I think if they can sell that value proposition to people correctly, I think it's going to work well. And I was just reading the Penny Arcade report today, and there was a talk about I don't know if we actually reported on this when it came out, but this thing called Smart Glass, which Microsoft is doing.
It doesn't work with anything.
Well, rumors right now is that it's only going to be working on Windows 8. I guess there's a chance it may come out on iOS too, but not initially. Initially, it looks like it's only going to be supported essentially on Surface. Mm-hmm. So A, it depends on how many people get Surface, and B, it depends on how quickly they end up rolling out support for iOS and Android. But for just to back up, for those who don't know what this
Microsoft Glass,
Smart Glass, mm-hmm. I keep wanting to call it Surface Glass. What the Smart Glass is, it's basically sort of It's basically going to do what the Wii U is trying to do, but before the Wii U gets there. Mm-hmm. It's going to take the tablet you already own and make it sort of an ancillary screen to your Xbox 360, basically.
Right. And that was the whole throwing things onto the screen. They had that going on. And unfortunately, at E3, they weren't really showing it. I don't think they only had it in the back room stuff. They weren't.
Yeah. And again, I don't know if that's because they were not sure if they were going to be supporting it for all these other, obviously with the 200 or so million, whatever it is, iPads out there and the 200 to 300 million Android devices that are out there, being able to support those where the person who's already got that device can whip it out and then they can start playing. Because I guess with this Smart Glass, you can use it as a controller, you can use it as a media controller, you can use it as a second screen, a la the Wii U.
Yeah, the coolest thing I heard about it was that you actually draw up a play for Madden. Oh, nice. You can actually do the X and O's and the circles and whatever, and then hit go, and your people will do that.
Interesting,
but I don't know. But as far as the Surface is concerned,
I
don't know if you want
to get back to the hardware.
Yeah, if you don't know if you want to talk more about that or not, but. I actually don't know really much about the specs and how that works out, pixels and
right.
Chip. Would it even be using like the A6 or
A7
chip?
Well, here's the trick. Here's the thing about the Surface, because the one that comes out this Friday is the ARM-based one, because they're releasing two. They're doing one that's ARM-based, which is like the iPad competitor, which is, it'll only run this Windows RT, which stands for Windows Runtime, which is basically apps that have been recompiled to run on ARM. and only those. And then like a few months from now or a month from now, they're releasing the full Windows 8 tablet that's on Intel that will run everything, backward compatibility wise for Windows and all the rest of it. So they're kind of splintering things. They're kind of doing what Apple did when it was like, okay, well, we've got the Mac, now we've got iOS, and they're completely different things, but they're sort of hedging by putting something right in the middle that's like, this is actually both. And so it's yet to be seen if that strategy is going to work. They kind of did the same thing with the keyboard. They're actually, instead of deciding which of the two keyboard covers they thought was going to be the best, they just released both of them, and you can pick. One sort of like a touch screen, kind of. The other one actually has physical keys that you can click.
I really think where this is going to make its money is against the people that are in between, like, well, I was going to get an iPad or a netbook,
right?
And I don't know what to get now. And now they're going to see this, and they're going to think, huh. Mm-hmm. And so now what this really may do, this may really start back up the Microsoft versus Apple, which one's better debate, which kind of has been non-existent since Apple's been kicking their butts.
Well, yeah, and that's, we're going to move, I think, from essentially a two-horse race into a three-horse race. The two-horse race, obviously, up until this point, has been iOS and Android. Mm-hmm. And anyone who's paying attention knows that, okay, yes, Android has the numbers, but in terms of, like, customer satisfaction and all the rest of it, iOS is crushing it.
Right.
You know what I mean? There are more Android phones out there, but very few of the people who actually get them are using them
as a smartphone.
They're
using it just as their phone.
Yeah, like something like 85% of all mobile browsing comes through mobile Safari. Mm-hmm. And something like 90-something% of tablet browsing comes through the iPad.
91%, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not really a race there. But Android they're firing on all cylinders, and they're getting phones out there. And Windows has been kind of trying to get there with the Windows 7 and 7.5 or whatever, but they just haven't. And I think they're finally sort of doing a do-over. Like, okay, forget that whole 7 thing. We're going to do 8 now.
Well, I think they're even saying, screw the phone. We're going tablets.
Well, but they're not, because Windows 8 is coming out on a bunch of new phones too, like these Lumias, which is going to be from what I understand, is going to be pretty cool. So,
well, like everything, it just depends on how quickly the developers get on board, and we'll see from there.
And I also think that it might make sense to start looking at this from the point of view of, the old way to look at it was, in the PCs, it's like, okay, you got your Apple people and you got your Microsoft, and those are sort of like battling for whatever. But that model is very different than the model that is in gaming right now, where you've got your Microsoft, your Sony, your Nintendo in the console space. This sort of mobile space is kind of a little bit PC and a little bit game model in terms of how these people are going to be competing. And I think it'll be interesting to see, once Windows has a real honest competitor, how that's going to sort of shake out. And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how that thing.
Yeah, competition, good.
And I really want to play with the Surface. I do. I just want to know what it's like. So anyhow. All right, so we got all that. So we've got a couple of sort of short things. Did you see the Bioshock Infinite trailer?
I heard it. I did not see it.
Oh, man, you got to watch it. First of all, to me, the news about this is that they're actually doubling down on the February release date. I had heard it indicate that was pretty unlikely to make it.
Yeah.
But apparently they're doubling down. They just released a brand new trailer, and there's the date, the February date. Boom, front and center right at the end.
Which kind of means that the Grand Theft Auto is going to be pushed back. It was one or the other. That's okay. From everything I was reading, it was one or the other was getting pushed back. So it looks like Bioshock got one.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, I'm pretty excited to get back into the Bioshock universe.
Yes.
I mean, this is obviously not a sequel. It's actually technically, I guess, a prequel, but it's... I don't know. There's something about that whole, like, you got a gun in this hand and you got some weird psychic something in this hand that was just, it was fun.
It was.
It was like a viscerally fun kind of run and gun thing, and I'm very excited to see, especially when you look at, we'll link to it in the show notes so people can check out this trailer on their own. I actually think we tweeted it too, because it really, it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun.
Awesome.
So, all right, a couple more short things. What do you got, Jimmy P?
The Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences used to give out the Design and Innovative Communication and Entertainment Award.
The DICE Award?
Yes. They called it the Interactive Achievement Awards. Everyone else called it the DICE Awards.
DICE Awards.
So they're officially calling it the DICE Awards.
So they're just changing the name?
Yeah.
Officially?
Officially changing the name.
So this is not going to be related to, like... Isn't there like a DICE conference? Is that the same thing?
This is the same thing, yeah.
Okay, well, see, that would explain it then. Okay, so the DICE conference is now officially changing the name of the award to the DICE Award. That makes sense.
Yeah, and But the Dice Award is known as the basically elite industry and most respectable award for the video game industry. Another very elite for the indies is the Independent Games Festival.
You know, we actually attempted to submit Uncle Slam to the IGF last year, and I guess they lost our application,
which makes sense because they had something like 520 applicants last year, which was a record for them. And now 567, and now they had 589.
That's a lot of games.
That's a lot of games. Thanks to things like the iPad, the iPhone, now the Surface, the Android, blah, blah, blah. So what they're doing is they're going to add a couple more categories to the finalist. 6 finalists under the main competition, and the Nuevo Award is going to get 8 finalists.
Okay.
So they're increasing the finalists, which is kind of like what the Academy Awards did the other year. But so that's always good for gamers, giving them more chances of winning.
Yeah, and I think things like the IGF and like Indiecade they're only going to get more important as we move forward, because as we saw with and I think we talked about this last week, so I won't rehash the whole thing, but this democratization of the ability to create games with things like Game Maker, Unity. There's something on Xbox Live, Xbox Arcade, where you can download and actually start building out your own games with like code chunks and stuff. The idea of people taking what they want to build and making a game out of it and releasing it is becoming so much easier.
Yes.
Steam Greenlight. I mean, there's so many ways now to get games out there that trying to wade through all of these is going to just get increasingly harder. That was the big buzzword at Indiecade when I was there, was games discovery. Games discovery, trying to separate the wheat from the chaff, is going to be the big thing in the next couple of years. It's almost as if GameMinder is perfectly positioned to help with that.
Yes.
All right, so let's talk about what's coming out this week. Obviously, there's a big game coming out this week. We'll get to that one last.
Okay.
But this week we've got Need for Speed Most Wanted. We got Marvel Avengers Battle for Earth, which I remember we talked about this. It's actually not directly related to the movie, but I'm probably going to play it because I love the Avengers. We got Borderlands Legends, which is an iOS, I guess it's like an iOS tie-in to the Borderlands franchise. And then Zone of the Enders HD Collection, which I don't know about, but I've definitely heard about. It's another one of these collections. Which I probably won't play this time. I'm still working my way through God of War. But, of course, obviously the big news this week is Assassin's Creed 3.
Assassin's Creed
This
3.
is been battling it out with Halo 4 to be the most followed, most tracked, most anticipated game in GameMinder, and it comes out in less than a week.
Yes.
I can't wait to see sort of how it is received by the gaming sort of community, because obviously if it's one of the most anticipated games, I mean, I have never been an Assassin's Creed guy. Have you played the previous ones?
I have not, but the way that they're doing this one with the whole Revolutionary War, really interesting.
I keep feeling like I should be getting into this series because it seems like it's pretty amazing. But right now I'm saving my pennies for Halo 4. That's gonna be my big one.
Nice.
All right, so what piqued your interest this week, Jim?
What piqued my interest was that game that you had just mentioned was the Borderlands Legends.
Okay.
It actually just got the date last night. And what it is just an iOS Borderlands version with the original Borderlands 1 cast.
Oh, nice.
And the reason I did it, because I just basically was interested now to see how these AAA developers and IPs, how they're transferring over to the mobile and doing it in their own different way. It's not just a port or anything like that. So that's what I chose, because I'm going to be interested to see how that works.
Right on.
How about yourself?
Well, I'm picking something that's a little bit different this week. I'm just going to highlight GameMinder 2.5, and there's a reason why, because we actually just added GameMinder 2.5 is out now. But we added a reminder for it because there's a number of people out there still using GameMinder 2.4. And the reason why it's important that you stop that and get yourself into GameMinder 2.5 and onto the GameMinder.com user system is because GameMinder 2.6 is coming down the pike. There's a lot that's going to happen in this. Stay tuned to the website, and probably next week's podcast we'll get into even more specifics about it. But the most important thing to understand is that in order to get your reminders to not disappear when we switch over to the new version, you need to get them into 2.5.
And you need to sign up.
Yes, you need to sign up for your account, because once we flip the switch, the old server goes dark, and then your reminders will essentially disappear into the ether forever.
And unfortunately, we can't do anything about it.
There won't be anything we can do about it.
I will apologize.
Jim will apologize profusely. But so make sure if you saw that pop up in your list, make sure you go and update because you've probably got about 2 to 3 weeks at this point before it's going to be over. All right, well, I think that's going to do it for the GameMinder Report this week. To view the show notes for this episode or follow any of the games mentioned today, don't forget to visit GameMinderReport.com/23.
And to see when the newest games are listed, don't forget to follow GameMinder on Twitter or visit us on Facebook.com/GameMinder.
And to follow all your favorite upcoming games, don't forget to visit GameMinder.com or download the app for iOS or Android.
And finally, don't forget to buy all your games through the website or app. Every game you pre-order and purchase helps us support this show and this service.
All right.
Signing off for GameMinder Report, I'm Jim.
And I'm Jeremy, reminding you,
Don't forget to play.